Time's just gone. I was saying good morning. I'd like to honour our Heavenly Father, the creator of the heavens and the earth, the creator of the sea and land and everything. And also I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of this land, elders past and present, but also the elders of Mapoon. Saying that, I would like to ask if anyone from Mapoon would like to come up and say a few things.
You're very welcome. Does anyone from Mapoon like to say something? Maybe Ted?
Later on.
Okay.
Okay.
We're not sure if Warren Edge is going to be able to make it because he's got a couple of other appointments, but he's going to try and plug in. Bob Catter is actually going to be launching for me, but he's on Island, so.
This book will put Mapoon on the map. So I share this forward. It should be made into a film. It is a gripping read that you will not be able to put down. Barbara's life has certainly been one of adventure. Though she didn't set out to find it, she just seemed to be where the action was and still is. To look at Barbara, you would think she's a blonde, blue-eyed woman, and what would she know about Aboriginal affairs? But she is a walking, talking history, mainly because she has lived it through, and been closely involved with many seasons and changes in Aboriginal affairs. I believe this book is a groundbreaking and history-making, and it honours many of the people who pioneered the move back, their supporters and those who came after them and helped rebuild Mapoon. Today, Barbara is touched to be talking to the children and grandchildren of the pioneers who are full of hope for the future. Thomas Edison is reported to have said, "Genius is 2% inspiration, 98% perspiration." And I would like to say the same about book writing. I've seen that through Barbara's determination to finish this book. I'm glad to have been able to support her through this writing process, 4 years in the making, with many other adventures on the way. And for me, it's truly an honour to read that and give that forward to my wife. This year we celebrated a wonderful 27 years of being married and keep falling in love.
Oh.
And it's true that I'd like to see this really put into a movie. But it's saying more than that. Desmond Zwar wrote this story, and his name is inscribed on the front entrance of this library. And he wrote the article, young Michael, our son, there in that photo, and he titled that "White Woman with a Black Heart." And so I'd like to see not only in this book, really, I think it will touch many high schools and principals, and this story needs to be told. And many pioneers and generations have paved the way for that to happen. I would go on to finish off in saying this. I would like to nominate Barbara next year as the Australian of the Year. And I think it would be fitting that. And if you believe that to happen, and I'll set something up very, very quickly, and certainly would need your support for that. In saying that, I'm going to do this song. It's It's called reconciliation. You have to clap. You have to dance in the right way. Australia, Mapoon went together. You and me, so I wrote. Let's talk, get together, let's sing, let's dance, reconciliation, every club, reconciliation, reconciliation. On the road, on the journey, corroborate you and me. Let's talk, get together, let's sing, let's dance, reconciliation, reconciliation, reconciliation. Put your hands on your ear, I can hear the sound. I can hear the sound of the didgeridoo. Can you hear the sound? I can hear the sound. Mom, you clap this. Of the clapsticks too. I can hear the sound of the didgeridoo. I can hear the sound of the clapsticks too. Would you like to play these clapsticks for me? Let's talk, get together, let's sing, let's dance, reconciliation, reconciliation, reconciliation. Hands on your ears, I can hear the sound. I can hear the sound. Reconciliation. I can hear the sound of the didgeridoo. I can hear the sound of the clapsticks too. I can hear the sound of the didgeridoo. I can hear the sound of the clapsticks too. I can hear the sound. What gives me an honor and pleasure to invite author, a beautiful wife, Barbara Miller, and Barbara. Dad would be also proud of you from dinner from heaven. And Mum is with us. 10 years with us, Dad. And he'll be proud and cheering you on. Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you. What a wonderful introduction. And lovely to see you all here today. Really the future generations that the baton will be handed on to. And I also want to acknowledge the Mapoon people as well. I also really want to thank God, because I thought I was going to have to be wheeled in here today in a wheelchair by Norman, because I've had really excruciating pain in my right knee for a week and haven't been able to walk. But I thank God that I was able to walk in here today, healed just in time. So, and I thank those who've been praying for me, including Mum over here and the family. So, welcome today. As I said before, if you want to put your business card or write your information on a card, there is a lucky door prize. There's refreshments there. I thank Norman for that wonderful entertainment. That was a song written by him, and the music by him and our Tabernacle of David team. Mum and I and Norman's sisters and brother all on the backup tape that you heard. So it was quite a family affair. So, look, I just really want to pay tribute to the Mapoon people and community. It is a wonderful example of how a community can rise from the ashes. And this is one of the ways in which the people describe themselves as having risen from the ashes. And there's good reason for that, because in 1963, on the 15th of September, the government boat Gallon came into Mapoon and rounded up, using state police, the Aboriginal people there who refused to move from Mapoon when the government tried to shut down the Presbyterian mission. Some were moved off, but these were the ringleaders, you might say, who refused to go, even though all the services were shut down, and they basically were there without a store or that was operating, or medical supplies, etc. The police came in and moved off 5 families, and Mrs. Jimmy was one of those, and she actually recorded the story of the removal. And you might wonder, why were they moved? It was because the government had mining leases with Warrack and Alcan, and incredibly that mining is a tragedy, a travesty of what occurred, because that mining never happened anyway. They should never have been moved off their land for mining in the first place, and the mining didn't even occur. Caloran, we know that at this particular time it was the Bianca Peterson government, and Caloran was in charge of Aboriginal Affairs, he was director, and he was actually on this boat watching the people being removed. The police had guns on them. There's a couple of stories about whether the guns were drawn or just in holsters, but it was enough to intimidate the people. They were removed up to a place called Hidden Valley, which is near Wymarra, and quite some distance really, and to be out of sight and out of mind. The name of that community then became New Mapoon, but the people never gave up hope that they would be able to return. I just pay such a tribute to the Mapoon people for their strength they wanted to do, they're a Christian group, they wanted to do a research and action project somewhere in Australia to look at the effects of government mining up the church on Aboriginal people, realising it's not been a good history. And so Burnham, which some of you may know, Harry Henry, said, look, I'll hook you up with some Aboriginal leaders in Canberra, organise a meeting so you can work out where in Australia you might go to do this project. So we went from Melbourne to Canberra and met up with Charlie Perkins, Nick Miller, John Moriarty, and in that meeting it was decided that the Wymarra area would be the place to go. And Mick kindly offered his home in Cairns as accommodation and an office to work from, because I was paid less than unemployment benefits to do that. And so it went on from there, and Mick got me to go to Warrack first, which is where I met Gerard Hudson, and it all started from there, and that's how I got involved. The whole project was turned on its head so that it wasn't a research project. It basically became helping the Mapoon people to get back to their land, and so there are so many people to thank in relation to that. But before I go any further, I just really want to honour Norman. We've been together now for nearly 30 years, and he's just been such a wonderful support to me. If it hadn't been for him, this book would not have been written. He's been so supportive, and although he wasn't involved with the move back, I ended up marrying Mick Miller, as many of you know, my first husband, and he was a very driving force behind this particular project. Norman and I went to Mapoon in 2016 and met with the people, and it was just wonderful to see how the community had rebuilt, and exciting to meet the grandchildren of people that I'd helped to move back. And the young people were saying, look, we just love it here. We don't miss being in the city. We can't wait to get home when we're in the city, because we love to be on country. We love to go fishing and crabbing and hunting, and to find a community where there's no crime or police aren't needed there. It's such a model community. It's I'm so pleased to have had some part in all of that. I also want to honour Mum here, and one of the things that happened for me, you'll find out this book is not just about Mapoon, although that's a large part of it, but also it's my memoir, my life story. It talks about my political awakening, my spiritual awakening, how I got to be at Mapoon, what's happened before and after that for me. But I must say that in writing this book, it's been an interesting experience for me too, because I often said the stork dropped me in the wrong home. And it took a visit by my brother a couple of years ago to say, and also Norman sort of saying, look, that's what your mum used to say. And I thought, hang on, I'm just repeating what Mum said. Because I was so different from the rest of the family in terms of my beliefs, and copped a bit because of that too, but I still love my parents. They've both passed on now. But I'm so privileged that I've had 4 Aboriginal mums to take me into their hearts, and one of them was Eslin's mother, Auntie Es. Auntie Rose is another one, and also, of course, Sissy Miller and Shirley Miller, and I can't ever express my thanks to them there's so much I could say. I'll say a little bit more, and you know, if anyone wants to ask me questions or anyone from Mapoon wants to come and say something, you're very welcome. But look, it was a huge thing for the Mapoon people to move back because there was incredible opposition. We're talking about the days of the Queensland Aborigines Act, the Queensland Torres Strait Islander Act, and you know, I was arrested for trespassing on Wymarra South Aboriginal Reserve, Mapoon as it's called today, and I had to go to court over that. Jerry Hudson was arrested for stealing a brumby. So it was just intimidation. And when I went to Thursday Island, you know, I was privileged to be able to stay with Tim and Sadie Logan in their house. And as I said, I had hardly any expense money, so that was a real blessing. And they fed me on the most wonderful seafood you could ever imagine. First time I tasted duck's eggs as well. But you know, Ted's mum, Marjorie Wymarra, she organised a meeting at her home, and she insisted on travelling to Bamaga with me to see the new Mapoon people. In fact, I was only young. I was 23 at the time. You know, a young white girl from the city, never been to an Aboriginal community when I landed in Arracoon, and Mick told me to go without a permit, without even asking for a permit, so that landed me in a lot of trouble to start with. And I was ordered back on the plane by the superintendent, but the plane took off before he could get me back on it, so he was stuck with me till the next plane came in. And so fortunately, a kindly nurse there and her husband put me into their home because there was no hotels or hostels or anything, you know. I couldn't ring out and say help. So anyway, you know, it all worked out, but you know, it was amazing, and I'm just talking off the cuff here, as you can tell. There, but you know, Jerry and Ina, Jerry was the head stockman at Arracoon, very important position. And he packed up everything. When I went there and I said, yes, I'll help, hoping that I really could. Big ask, really. I said, I'll try. And he and Ina and their adult daughters, they packed up everything, hired a plane and put me on it, a little charter plane, and we went to Wymarra and up to Mapoon, and they moved. They already moved straight away there in April. The government intimidated them back off again, and they had to camp at Stubby Beach in Wymarra, which wasn't on government control until they were able to move back. But they moved back in their heart, in their minds already as soon as I met them. Travelled with me, and Jean and Gilbert Jimmy and Alan and Thelma Burke happened to be visiting Jerry. They had chartered the other plane, and we all went together that morning. So what I found was people were travelling with me everywhere. I guess take the hand of this young white girl and help her out because she wants to help us. And Susan Hudson, when I was going to Thursday Island, Susan Hudson travelled with me. And then Marjorie Wymarra and sister were travelling with me over to Bamaga. Now I did have permission. Ted Logan made sure I got permission. It didn't matter. Marjorie Wymarra and I were still put under house arrest at the Bamaga hostel. At least there was a hostel there to stay. And Eddie Wallace Smith, who happened to be the member for Cook at the time, fortunately he was in the community and got us out, and got us down to New Mapoon for a meeting at the church on Sunday with the people. That was the only way we could do it. So there's lots of stories I could tell you, but the intimidation was very severe, and I remember one week meeting at Wymarra South of the Mapoon say that his intimidation didn't work that day. And Ron Stowell, which some of you may know, happened to be with the Federal Department of Aboriginal Affairs at that meeting, and that turned Ron around to a supporter, because before that he said, oh, it's just a bunch of old ladies who want to go back to Mapoon, they can't make a go of it, the government can't support that. But when he saw the men stand up to this intimidation, he said, okay, I realise that there's a chance this can work, and he put his support behind the project. Even when we visited Mapoon, Don Egan, who was the one who took Jerry and I to court, he made sure he was up there intimidating Jerry and the others that they couldn't live there. So with all of this backdrop, you wonder how on earth the people managed to get back. But there was a meeting with Cloran. Cloran was in Wymarra for a meeting of the Wymarra Aboriginal Society. The Mapoon people bailed him up, including, I was there and Clary Grogan was there too. Clary put his foot in the door because they wouldn't let people in, and barged in. And as soon as Clary went in, Cloran went out and stopped the meeting. But he would only meet one-on-one with a couple of the Mapoon people, and that was it. They said, this is it. This is it. We're going back no matter what. And so they went back about a week later on the 18th and 19th of September. The people went back to Mapoon. We had this cavalcade. I was with them on the back of a truck. And, it was, Clary, the legal service chartered a plane up from Cairns. Bruce Johnson was very helpful in setting up the community legally. Peter White was on the plane, Clary Grogan and Peter Noble were on the plane, just to give people that support, to help them to move back. I organised for the ABC to be there, and so the ABC guy was, Ray Harding, was in the plane, flying over the cavalcade as we travelled back. Dirt road, it was safe, a very impenetrable road at that point, but I would love to get the film, and I haven't been able to track that film down. I still would like to do that. And while I'm here, I want to thank Dr. Tim Bottoms too for writing a great review for me for more than one book, so thanks Tim. And the families that moved back, Jerry and Ina Hudson and Alan and Thelma Berg and Jean and Gilbert Jimmy and Norman and Jessie Wheeler and Harry Toyboy and others, Rachel and Simon Peter and Frank and Maggie Dawn, as old as they were, they got someone to a charter to bring them down. I think it might have been Edgar Williams even who brought them down from the Bamaga area down to move back to Old Mapoon. So an amazing story, and they get back there and it's a devastated community. So they just used the old timbers, the old irons, got bush timber and made tables and chairs and beds and bush houses and carried water and had fortunately Zena and Cess Tamisi, who'd moved back with them in this rail motor converted to a caravan, an amazing piece of equipment, but they had a generator that helped them out. So look, it was hard, it was really hard, but they stuck at it, trust and their local government status, and that's where Bob Catter actually did help them to get that, and Far Quantum Legal Service and the North Queensland Land Council, of which Mick and I and Clarion Peter started, and many others supported, and also Far Quantum Legal Service when it got set up. All those organisations helped as well. And I really want to honour the people from the 60s, the Cairns Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Advancement League, and for Catsy, Joe McGuinness, the O'Shanes, the Guevaras, and many others, because of their contribution to keep the story of Mapoon alive. So I might just leave it there, because I could, you might imagine, could just keep going on, but I hope that gives you a nice overview. So do enjoy the food and drink, and there are a number of books there to purchase. There's also some CDs there of Colleen Wymarra that you might be interested in as well. They're $20. So and have a look at the posters there as well if you would like to do so. So thank you very much for coming today. And if anyone from Mapoon wants to say something, you're still welcome to do so. Thank you.
Wymarra, Lucy Warrack. I'll start off first, and Lucy will say a few words. I was born at Mapoon 2 months after the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. So figure out what year. 1941. And we stayed there until 1945. End of 1945, my father kept on arguing with the Presbyterian Church about a lot of things that were wrong. And so one day he just came down with a lugger from TI and took us to Thursday Island. I have a lot of pleasant memories of Mapoon. We were a bit bad from time to time. Sorry, I get a bit emotional. But there were bad times too. You know, we were treated like kids, adults were treated like kids. I remember one time we came back, and it was, we used to come back on holidays, Christmas time. And we came back on the lugger, the down the song. And spent Christmas at Mapoon with Granny and all them. And there was a big church conference, a church service. And I remember the names of the ministers who were there. One was the, I don't want to offend any Presbyterians here, but I'm going to tell you the truth anyway. But the Presbyterian minister, there was two of them. There was one called Reverend Jim Sweets, and the other one was Dr. Coombs. Dr. Coombs was, I don't know what you call it today, they're like a bishop, right? In those days you called him a moderator. And everybody went to church. The bells rang, you know. I get a bad feeling every time I go to the Commonwealth Bank and the bell rings, it makes me look around and see if the minister's here. We seem to be governed by the bell. But anyway, cut a long story short, we had this big service. I can remember my grandmother, some other old lady sitting beside me. I was about 8 or 9 years of age. So they're going to sing a hymn for the two ministers. And the hymn was, let us with a glance of mine. Praise the Lord, for he is kind. For his mercies they endure, ever faithful, ever true. And these two are sitting up there. They're looking at us. And we didn't know that they were wolves in sheep's clothing. They actually told a lie on their pulpit and said that this whole of this community was infested with hookworms, TB, all that sort of thing. It was all a lot of bullshit. Sorry the language, but it was. Anyway, they came afterwards and told everybody we had to shift. And I remember my grandmother and another granny and saying, well, we have to go. They're the men of God. They told us we have to go. They're telling the truth. And it wasn't. There was nothing there. Mapoon was the healthiest community in the Cape. Out of all that, the whole Cape area to the Torres Strait to PNG, where you had riddled with TB, Mapoon only had one patient. So it was the healthiest community. But they were there representing this mining company who was waiting in the wings. And at that time we thought or we heard that the mining company was going to use Mapoon as a port for this mine and bauxite and Wymarra. So those are some of the unpleasant memories I've had. I used to be a good Presbyterian once. I don't go back anymore. I can't. I'll become a Catholic because of the hurt. What they did. They told all these lies. And people that moved away from there because of all these lies, people died. Well, they died up here at Wymarra, all these other places. They couldn't stand it. They had to move. But most of the time, they died of a broken heart. And yet all this happened. But we used to come down to Mapoon and go back and then come back until one of the houses that was burnt was my father's, and he gave it to Lucy's father. And you know what? Those houses were built, the timber were cut by their own hand, no government funding. It wasn't the Department of Housing or ACSIC or whatever. Those houses were paid for by men working on luggers, shooting crocs in those days, which was legal, selling skins. And yet they were all burnt until to this day, no one has been compensated for that. And yet you hear all about this Aboriginal welfare. You know, we get all this, nobody even talks about it anymore. And that, to me, I think that's a crime. I go back there now, and I see our place. We see the spoons, the panicking line on the stove, and all that sort of. Where my mother used to cook damper, and her mother. I think I've said enough. I think I've made a few bad friends. But I just want to congratulate Bob and Norm. I'm still a Christian, but I'm not a Presbyterian. I would never be. Thank you.
Thanks.
Hello, my name is Warrack. I'm Ted's cousin. Ted's my older cousin. My father was born on Mapoon along with his siblings. And we're not traditional owners. We're actually, again, the anthropologists say we're the historical people. Our grandmother came from around the Normanton Croydon area, and our grandfather came from around the Warrack area, and came over there and met our grandmother at Old Mapoon. And people refer to Old Mapoon. Our parents refer to Old Mapoon, not New Mapoon, because that's where the people, I believe, some people have gone to New Mapoon. My family ended up on Thursday Island, and that's why I was born on Thursday Island. People say, oh, you're born on Thursday Island, you must be Torres Strait Islander. I said, no. My family come from, and we always identify as, Aboriginal from the Cape area and also Old Mapoon. So I wasn't born on Old Mapoon. My two older brothers were born at Old Mapoon. My parents relocated to Thursday Island, and the family were already on Thursday Island. And I believe that from the stories that I heard from my parents, Dad was working on the boat or on the lager, I believe, around that time when that all happened, when the people were, what I've heard, loaded onto the boat like cattles, and transported to the various communities. My parents never talked about it till later in life. It's only when I actually started doing studies later on in my life that they have talked about it. It was very emotional for them to talk about it because they thought it was actually happening to them. It was happening to them. And it was very, and I guess the Mapoon people and what again, regardless what has actually happened to them, where people relocated from Old Mapoon and relocated to Thursday Island, like my family were, and my other siblings were born on Thursday Island. And what's the beauty of it all? I'm not saying it's the beauty of all of it. Disregarded of all that, the family of Old Mapoon people were managed to hold together. They kept together. And they talked. And they, I guess because there was no counselling when I thought about it. No counselling, no nothing or whatever during that time. So therefore the people hold together. We were like a subgroup within the Thursday Island. We were like the dislocated people. When you hear, in the last couple of years of what happened in Western Australia, closing off some of that community down there, and it's nothing new because what actually happened up here, and people don't know about what really happened up there. And with Barbara now, because I didn't hear some of that story, so thank you, Barbara, because again, I knew when I was younger, came down to Cairns, and knowing that, my families and the aunties and I know Ted was very much involved with the Advancement League at that time, when they were again, fighting for people to go back to Mapoon. My parents never go back to Mapoon. It was until 40 years later. Only when I started doing my studies, and and I've heard the stories through my aunties and uncles and my grannies, my grandmother, when she talked about the stories about Mapoon, and it was very much in my head when I went back up there because I was doing my masters at the time when I went back up there, and and all the stories they used to tell me was very much in my mind, and I could go to those places and story places that my father had told me. It was very much what I pictured in my mind. And and as Ted was saying, when we went to some of the, where our grandparents' place was and my parents' place was, you could still see the evidence of, tobacco, the old tin tobacco, there, and the axe, I think when we went back there. Cups and stoves, all those sort of things, they were still there, very much still there. And, and the thing is that, they had horses. They had horses, I believe, too, as well. And all that was all gone, so the people, as my dad used to say, that when they went to Thursday Island, they had just gone, they went there with the clothes they had on their backs, and they just got on the best way they could. And lucky that we had some families on Thursday Island that was already there, that we stayed and lived there. But yes, but as I said, my parents never talked about it, it was till later in life that they talked about it, and when they took me back to the Old Mapoon and showed me, and it was for me too, it hit reality for me too as well, of some of the stories that they have told, that it made sense to me what has actually happened. This wasn't a lie, it did happen, So I think I better stop there too as well, because I'm very much emotional too as well, and it's me when I talk about this sort of things too as well. So thank you, and thank you, Barbara.
I just want to add that those two ministers, the moderator and the the Reverend Combs. I don't know whether you watch the movies a lot, but he looked to me like, you know the guy in Mutiny on the Bounty? The guy that plays Bly, anyway, he looked to me like him. And Jim Sweet went on to be a famous minister and all that. And I think one of his nephews now is Gary Sweet, the actor. So that's the connections.
Look, thank you. I think it's great that we had, those first-hand accounts there from family, from Mapoon. I'd just like to add really quickly, I thought this was really interesting that when the people moved back to Mapoon, Ted's mum, she went to Mapoon just to give them support, and with another lady from TI, and they actually stayed in the mission house where the missionaries used to live, and then 3 of the Presbyterian Church people came to visit with a donation of $500 to help the community. And so Ted's mum actually entertained the missionaries as visitors to the mission house, and I thought that was a really nice story. So I had to put that in. Can you imagine them? Can you imagine it? They would have had some chuckles, I'm sure. But yes, the Presbyterian Church, there were some good ministers and some who weren't. And unfortunately that's the case. It took a long time coming, but eventually the Queensland Government Qld apologised, and also the Uniting Church, who took over from the Presbyterian Church, apologised as well. And so one of the mottos of the Mapoon community is forgiven, not forgotten. And when they have their Panja festival, that's the motto they have, forgiven, not forgotten. So I might leave it there today, and thank you so much for coming. Please avail yourself of refreshments, have a look at the posters, get some books if you'd like to do that. Okay, thank you so much.
If there was a couple of questions that you might want to quickly ask, please just ask for Barbara's here and she will love to sign the books there for you as well. Any questions? No? Okay. Thank you.